Welcome to the Tricord Advisors podcast, where we answer life's hard questions to help you make smart decisions with your money. I'm Jeremiah Lee, and this is Randy Barkley. We're both certified financial planners. I'm also a California licensed attorney. Welcome back. We've been talking about legacy planning, and we've kind of spoken through, the legacy for a lot of people is your fourth quarter. It's if you're watching a basketball game or some sort of sports event, and it's been a good game throughout, the most interesting quarter becomes the fourth quarter. How is this going to finish? And for folks living their lives, the same applies. If you've lived a good life, you've earned money, you've had some success, some accomplishments, the fourth quarter becomes extremely interesting. Mm-hmm. How are you going to finish? And we talked in the last section about is legacy is not just your money. Legacy is the morals you're passing on. It's how you continue in the social status or the position in your family, all the way through your life, and even in passing on some things. But one thing I want to talk about that is legacy planning is also legacy planning for the unexpected. If we would say plan A is what we just talked about. Plan A is that you live till a ripe old age. Plan A,
and everything goes right.
Yeah. Plan A is that you have a successful working life. You then have plenty of money through the rest of your life. You give it generously to those around you. You're able to stay healthy. You're able to do all those things. That's kind of plan A. Well, a plan B, which most everyone runs into, is at some point you have to die. At some point you're going to, and I think
we're all going to die.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately when I do estate planning with folks, they jump to that as if that's plan A, like we're going to die and this is where our stuff goes.
That's interesting.
And I would say plan A is you live your life and you utilize your stuff and you give your stuff and you make good use of what you've built.
You benefit from the work and effort that you.
And so does those around you, right? That'd be in my mind. That's plan A. So to plan A to say, we're fully cared for, our families are fully cared for, and we die with very little, I feel is plan A. There's others who have different goals and ambitions, and that's a personal thing. But for plan A, I think that's living to a ripe old age. Plan B is that at some point you'll die, and that might be very soon, it might be very late, and putting a safety net in there so that when someone were to pass away, those around you are not left in a lurch. The future hopes and dreams are not dashed in a moment. And I think that's a little bit of, I guess, safety net planning. And just as an example, I have a client that her husband passed away unexpectedly, fairly young.
And he was very young.
He was, very young, 40s, and unexpected. But they had life insurance. They had some other things. They weren't hugely in debt that was unreasonable. And after everything was kind of settled and the insurance assets kind of covered things, in a moment, in a heartbeat, she would give it all back to have her husband back, of course.
For sure.
However, part of his legacy is that he left his wife and kids in a position that they can continue the life that he was building while he was alive.
Right.
And that in and of itself is a legacy, legacy to say, this is what my family and I were building. And even though I no longer get to be a part of it because of an unexpected event, my family continues on that same path. And that is I think a beautiful part of safety net planning, and that's partly through insurance. Partly it's through having a good estate plan, wills and trusts and things like that.
But I think the protection aspects of it, I always come back to, I always tell clients, I said, life insurance, the format for life insurance, at the end of the day, it replaces money. If you have enough money, life insurance becomes very, very insignificant, so to speak. Not to say you get rid of all your policies, but the primary purpose of life insurance is to pay for those things that you haven't been able to get through because of time. Let's say like a mortgage, or getting your kids through college, or creating the income for your spouse that depends upon your income, whatever that is. And that's where it comes down to. It says, what's the amount of insurance you need and what kind of insurance that you need?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't take really the time to think about, first of all, that. There are some practical things. And the two of us are not people that are life insurance, so to speak, agents. So what our concern always is that life insurance is kind of like a man with a hammer trying to find a nail.
Sure.
And we're trying to solve all the financial problems by using life insurance. That we see it as a tool, but we don't see it as the end all.
Yeah, no, I think it needs a good job, and there's a specific place where insurance is the best way to solve it. But you're right. We'll see a number of folks that will come to us and they have these, universal or whole life policies that were sold not because of it's a protection, but because this is an investment vehicle.
Right.
That was going to be so good for them. And in a very few, situations, it's a great thing to have. In many of those situations, it was not the best investment vehicle, and they're trying to solve a number of problems with one thing. But all that said, insurance has an absolute place, and so does estate planning. Like we've talked, I think, on the radio before here. But when someone if on their deathbed they were to give away their home, a home they'd owned for 20, 30 years, they give it to their kids because I want you to have this. Well, in that quote unquote gift during their life, they just gave away their entire tax basis, which means all those capital gain taxes they might owe, they just gave those to their kids.
You need to flesh that out a little bit more. I think our listening audience probably, it's natural for a parent to want to make sure that their property goes to their children or child. And they actually are going to harm that child from a tax standpoint.
Yeah, from taxes. And that's why it takes some good planning. But yeah, if you were to give property during your life, you give them the cost basis that you have. And whenever someone sells a property, that's like an investment rental or something, the difference between the cost basis they paid for it, say $100,000, and the sale price, say $400,000, that difference is all taxable. And it's usually taxed at the capital gains rate. So if someone's had a property for 20, 30 years, you could have a massive amount of capital gains.
Particularly in the last several years where we've had really good equity building, right?
Yeah. So the day before death, on their deathbed, they give this gift. Well, all those taxes survive, they continue on, and that next generation will owe those taxes when they sell. Based on current tax laws, if someone were to pass away owning a property, usually in a trust would be the best way to do it. You set up a trust, the trust owns the property so you can avoid probate. But if somebody passes away, all of those taxes, in essence, can disappear. Because at death, you get what's called a step up in basis. So your cost basis that might have been $100,000 when you bought it 20, 30 years ago, all of a sudden that cost basis moves all the way up to the fair market value on the date of your death. And the next generation inherits that property at that fair market value.
So if I sell the property the week after my mom or dad passes away, what's my tax on that?
Yeah, very likely zero. There's some other aspects and some other things that go into there, and every situation, of course, is different.
Right.
But generally, all those capital gains that existed during your parents' life at the time of their death, when the next generation inherits that property, all those taxes just disappear. It's one of the magic pieces of our tax code.
And if the trust is set up appropriately, I'm assuming this in this scenario or in most scenarios, people are going to have a trust.
Yeah, like in California, you want to have a trust to avoid probate and name who it goes to.
So the aspects of the dynamic part of the trust is the control aspect, right? So there's a succession of authority, goes from the people who created the trust and who bought the assets and managed it, and it passes over typically to a family member. But that is the successor trustee. And what is their role then?
Yeah, so most everyone, when they create a trust, they name the successor trustee. And that's the person is going to basically step into the shoes of whoever made the trust when they pass away. They step into their shoes, and they have marching orders in the trust. It might say, take care of my kids until they're 30. It might say, divide up what I have and give it away to my nieces and nephews. There's marching orders that they've spelled out. But I guess we bring this up to say, like, there's tax aspects, there's safety, security, insurance aspects that all are part of the legacy. But I kind of want to stress that legacy isn't just where your money goes.
Right.
People jump to that. Okay, what's my will going to say? But legacy is a much larger picture. And part of it absolutely is your trust. Part of it is some really good planning to make sure whatever assets you have transition to the next generation as smoothly, as tax efficiently, as without causing strife and conflict within the family. That's all the legal work or the financial planning work that we would do. But the bigger questions, what I love to walk people through is that legacy. What do you want your legacy to be while you're alive? What do you want your legacy to be as you finish well, and give an example to that? I have an example in my family. My grandmother was sick later in her life, and my grandfather would go, and she had to be at a care facility. He'd have lunch with her every day for years. And that was how he couldn't do a lot for his wife that he used to. He wasn't physically able, but he was able to show up. And that was a legacy that I have from my grandfather of loving a spouse well to the end.
To the end.
Even when things are no longer fun, they're no longer easy, he was present, he was there with her. And that's a legacy he passed on. And it cost him nothing. It was just something that he did. So there's aspects of legacy that are tangible. There's aspects of legacy that are just passing on who you are.
Intrinsic. Yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation between Jeremiah and myself about legacy planning. It's more than just money. There's a lot more to it than that. And if you'd like to have more information about what we're talking about, I'd suggest that you reach out to us. Phone number is 951-684-7011, or just simply go to retirementunlimited.com, go to the contacts button, and send whatever question you'd like to have answered. Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.